Welcome to MMA Fancast. My name is Luke Payson. Welcome back to everyone who is already a subscriber to the channel. If you're not already a subscriber, please subscribe so you can see more great interviews, including the one coming at you right now. Always an honor to have a first-time guest on the show. This first-time guest is a super experienced pro fighter with a record of 11 wins, 6 losses. 9 of those 11 wins have been by finish, 9 by submission, 2 by knockout. He's about ready to come on the show to talk about his next pro fight, which will be in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, coming up September 21st for Brawl in the Burgh, 23 for 247 Fighting Championships. Very excited to have first-time guest on the show, Korean Thunder, Ryan Kim Cafaro. Come on the show, Korean Thunder. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. The the last name is Cafaro. It was close. Close.
I
No
know.
worries.
You told me it right before we started recording. I said, it'll be easy, and then I butchered it. Kafaro, I apologize, but thanks for coming on the show. At least I got the Korean Thunder nickname right. So at least
that part was awesome.
Super pumped to have you on the show.
That was great.
We get to your fight against Justin, the General Patton. That's an incredible matchup. For people that are not following, please follow 247 Fighting Championships on Facebook. They just put a cool little video out on you and your opponent. How, you know, the prediction is kind of that whoever wins is showing that they're ready to get to the UFC level. And there's that much focus on this fight. That much. It's the first time you've been on MMA Fancast. I really appreciate you coming on. Talk a little bit about pre-MMA. What sports did you do growing up? And then get us in for your 17-fight pro career today.
Yeah, well, I didn't really have a whole lot of experience with sports. Actually, both my parents were classical musicians that graduated from the Juilliard School of Music. And then they both played in the Philadelphia Orchestra and the Curtis Institute of Music. So both my parents were, highly touted musicians and expected me to kind of follow their path. And I did for a long time, playing a lot of instruments. I was actually I played the clarinet for like 6 or 7 years. And I was getting pretty serious with that. But in high school, I tried a little bit of track and cross country. And then I started wrestling after I got bullied a little bit as a freshman by a senior or two. And that kind of got me to start lifting weights. And then one of my friends who became one of my teammates, Andrew Aguilar, said, you should start wrestling. And then I, started wrestling my sophomore year of high school. And it took off from there. But I think my senior year, I saw a UFC fight on Spike TV back in the day, which is a rather old sentence to say.
Oh, it's a great sentence.
And I saw Evan Tanner versus David Loazo, and I was hooked right off of that. I was like, that's what I want to do. And I knew exactly what I wanted to do for the rest of my life since I was 17 or 18 in high school. And I think it's cool that not a lot of people can say that. That they knew exactly what their passion was in their teens. So everything I've done since that moment has revolved around becoming a professional fighter. And fast forward almost 17, 18 years now. I'm 34 with over 30 fights experience between amateur and professional MMA and Muay Thai. I've been ranked number 1 in the state of New Jersey and PA. I think right now I'm somewhere number 1 or number 2 or something like that. And, I think that I have, if you look at my record, I fought the toughest guys in the region for sure. Almost every single person I fought has had 10 fights or more, and a lot of really, really grizzled and experienced veterans throughout that record and resume.
Yeah, I'm on Tapology right now. You're ranked number 10. So in the top 10 of all of Northeast. So that's 143 active pro featherweights. That is a huge deal. They currently have you ranked top three in Pennsylvania. And for some reason,
nice.
Doesn't have you ranked. It's very nice. Doesn't have you ranked in New Jersey. Not quite sure why. Usually if you haven't fought in that state for 2 years, but pro, you made your amateur debut in 2009, your pro debut in 2013. So you've been a pro now 11 years. I already mentioned the 17 fights. So I guess, because this is going way back.
Advanced amateur fight in Pennsylvania. It was it was my first fight where I was ended up winning the fight in 20 something seconds. So I never really even got a chance to do ground and pound or anything like that. So by the time I transitioned to professional and made my pro debut in Bellator, I was vastly underprepared for that fight. And, it was just, I had too many things going on at the time. And, with work, and I was still a full time college student working two jobs. And I ended up losing my professional debut to somebody that took it very, very seriously. And, in retrospect, I would have done a lot of things differently. The manager at the time that I had was a pretty shady character and kind of, goaded me into going pro by promising me the debut in Bellator. Didn't really, he promised me a lot of things and didn't really deliver on anything aside from, oh, I can make your debut in Bellator. That's basically it. So I would say that the lessons I learned from my amateur career were, if I could go back in time, I would have taken tougher fights. I wouldn't have even worried if I had accumulated more losses, because I would have rather have fought tougher people at the time. I had an opportunity to fight a guy that beat Jordan Burroughs in the Olympics named Bekzad Abduramakov or something like that. And I said no because I was absolutely terrified of him, as I should have been. But I, in retrospect, I think I wish I had fought him, because it would have really been like, hey, this is the kind of wrestler you can run into in the pro ranks, and you better be prepared for it. So I would just say that I definitely got a lot out of my amateur career. I'm one of the few amateur fighters that has like 10 amateur fights. A lot of these guys get 2 or 3 and go pro. But all in all, it was a good experience. And I definitely think that people should try to rack up at least 10 amateur fights before jumping to the pro ranks, especially if they haven't suffered any adversity. And that would probably summarize my amateur career in a nutshell.
That's a great summary. I appreciate you sharing that. I'm honored to run this channel, and a lot of times, which is great, I talk to amateurs that have I'm going to fight 1 or 2 and then go pro mindset. I think from what you said and from what I've seen, that the amateurs that rack up kind of more amateur fights than most would get, like you're talking about, they develop better when they go to the pro. Also, really cool to have one part of history on the show tonight. I think the advanced amateur rule set in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is a big deal. The fact that you took part in the first one of that, it definitely helps. You didn't really get the experience of it because it was only a 26-second fight, but I've seen that. That's my big thing for encouraging novice fighters that think after a couple wins they should go pro. They haven't had the more full rule set. It's still not a complete rule set, but ground and pound makes a difference. Shin guard list makes a difference, longer round. So really cool to have somebody with 17. You're coming into your 18th pro fight. Talk about how you wish you would have had even tougher fights as an amateur. So please listen to what the Korean Thunder is saying, because I think that makes a big difference. Also, you kind of got into a little bit of the behind the scenes part. So jump now. Where are you training out of? What's it like training out of that gym, and how long have you been there? And kind of talk about current coaches and sort of how your development's going now.
Yeah, so I started at LA Boxing in 2009. That gym became a UFC gym, and then it ultimately the gym disenfranchised and became TKO Fitness, run by myself and Alex Barbosa. So I started actually there as a member. And then fast forward, however many years, well over a decade at this point, Alex Barbosa and I we own the gym that we started at. So it's cool, and I'm proud to say that I'm homegrown. I've stayed at one gym my entire career and built myself up from the ground up. That being said, I've been all over the place. I've trained with so many different people. People know me. Some of my friends joke and say I'm the busiest guy in MMA because I'm always jumping around in different gyms and doing different things. For a while, I was working and training at Renzo Gracie under Daniel Gracie for a couple of years. And then, before that, gym transitioned over to Marquez MMA, where, you have all the UFC superstars in there, Brady, Sabatini, all those guys. But I really kind of established a foothold under the Ricardo Almeida affiliation, working with the guys from Frankie Edgar's team in North Jersey. So I work with a lot of the guys from Nick Catone MMA and Ricardo Almeida Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And those guys have kind of been like my home guys from like probably 2 or 3 amateur fights into my career. I had the opportunity to work with guys like Frankie Edgar. And then over the course of my career, I actually had the opportunity to coach and corner these guys because I became the Muay Thai and kickboxing specialist for these guys when it came to, holding pads for guys like Frankie and Marlon Moraes and, all the top UFC caliber guys. So it's pretty cool because when I first started fighting, I came from an era where you could lie about your credentials and it was difficult to find out whether you were lying or not.
Yeah.
So like you would have guys that would kind of snake oil salesman their way into gyms and say, "Oh, I'm this experienced coach. I have, 500 fights and blah blah blah." And then, you kind of as you watch them train, you're like, "I don't think you know what the fuck you're talking about." Pardon my language, but so it was cool for me to get the opportunities because guys like Frankie Edgar trusted me, but also got to watch me grow and evolve from an amateur fighter all the way to, a professional fighter to a professional coach. So I've been on both sides of the game as a fighter and a coach my entire career. I've been cornering people as long as I've been coaching people, and I think coaching has always come to me as like a natural affinity. And I feel like long after I'm done fighting, my career has just started as a coach.
Wow, that is cool. I've often said on here that coaching is its own sport. That people that don't know, and obviously you've been a coach and a fighter for a long time, coaching is its own focus, your own game plan, there's challenges as a coach that you wouldn't have as a fighter. Of course, there's challenges as a fighter you wouldn't have as a coach, but coaching is its own sport, its own industry. Tapology does not have you listed as fighting out of the TKO gym. So what's the name of the gym that you own and train out of?
It's called TKO Fitness in Cherryhill, New Jersey. It used to be LA Boxing. I think it still says LA Boxing on there.
Well, yeah, it has. It has. Yeah, there it goes. It has LA Boxing, New Jersey. Okay, gotcha.
Yep, still the same building and everything, just different
So that
different
makes
logo
sense.
on.
Well, that is really cool. And
Yep.
I guess we got to get to the fight, but before we do, you mentioned about training Frankie Edgar. Some of the guys you were talking about, New Jersey, New York, and New Jersey. Really, I'm sure still now, Philadelphia, all that area, just so rich. I mean, you mentioned Ricardo Almeida, you mentioned Nick Catone. I mean, some of these big, I think Corey Anderson was thrown into one of those gyms for a while, if I remember right. Just a lot of talent coming out there. How rich do you think the Philly, New Jersey, New York scene is? And what's kind of special do you think about this area? Because you mentioned a lot of guys from the Philly, New York, New Jersey, kind of tri-state area.
Well, I think what's really cool about it is I like the fact that you bring up Philly because a lot of the MMA scene in Philly and the tri-state area, in my opinion, stems from one gym in particular, which is Dada's Fight Club.
Oh.
That was around at my time when I started fighting in 2009. At the time, the only real like MMA powerhouse gym was Dada's Fight Clubs, and then from there you see the branching off from all the different high level fighters that came from that gym become and go different routes to open different gyms. If you look at Jackson Galka opening North Star MMA in Philly, my Muay Thai coach Aaron Meisner from Royal Striking, he opened his gym. He was a Dada's guy. Malik Kamara at Delco Fitness and MMA. Those are three gyms I can name just off the top of my head from guys that were successful fighters and good coaches over at Dada's Martial Arts in Philadelphia. So it's really cool that it's kind of like a butterfly effect that one gym has created so many different successful gyms. Jake Skelly from Broad Street Kickboxing. I mean, I could go on and just keep just naming off really cool gyms and cool instructors from these gyms that all originated from one place. But what I do think is cool is that when you talk about the tri-state area, in the New York, New Jersey, PA, even Delaware area, all of us are within probably like a 3-hour driving distance and are all willing to come to each other to train. So like for instance, I've trained with, elite professional kickboxer Brima Kamara in Delaware. And then a few days later, I'll go up to North Jersey to spar at Nick Catone MMA and also train Corey Anderson because I'm busy coaching him as well. And, I'm jumping all over the place. And then I'll go spar with Paul Felder in Philly with Aaron Meisner at Royal Striking. So it's like, it's cool that we just have like this camaraderie of this tri-state area, which has gotten, it's honestly gotten to the point for me that I don't really want to fight anyone from any of these gyms anymore. I don't want to fight anyone locally. So that's honestly which kind of rolls me into the next part of our interview, probably, which is why I'm willing to drive 5 hours to Pittsburgh to fight Justin Patton in his hometown, or in his home, state area, in his home turf, if you will. So that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to come all the way out to Pittsburgh and fight him there.
Yeah, that's perfectly where the conversation's going. I appreciate you knowing that. You fought a lot, the Art of War, cage fighting, CFFC, the stuff that's based in Eastern Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Ring of Combat, King of the Cage. I mean, you've just done so much stuff. I mean, your debut was in Bellator, and even though it didn't work out right, I mean, you've clearly shown that you have a ton of experience. How did you get connected to 247? You're going to be making your 247 debut. I think it's a big deal that you're coming from the powerhouse of the East Coast gyms, like you just listed, who's who of gyms. You're coming out to the Pittsburgh area for the Monroeville Convention Center, September 21st. So talk about how that came together, and then what are your thoughts on Justin Patton and kind of, being the out of town guy, but also that level of matchup. Because at the end of the day, no matter where it takes place, it's the two guys in the cage that really makes the difference.
Right. So I got, 247 has offered me a couple of fights over the course of time, and, opportunities that I wanted to jump on that just honestly didn't pan out. Like the timing wasn't right, or I was injured. I tore my ACL, maybe 2 years ago at this point, maybe 3 years ago at this point, now that I think about it. And so like, I remember they offered me fights then and I couldn't take them. But then, I just prepared for a Muay Thai fight for CFFC Muay Thai that ultimately got canceled the week of for me. So I was kind of in this weird what now situation. I was already in shape and just kind of waiting around, and frankly bored that I wasn't getting any opportunities anymore. And then I got a message from 247 and just asking, hey, would you be interested in fighting somebody who was 7-3? And it sounded familiar. And then I quickly looked at like the PA top 10, and I was like, Patton, that's definitely Patton. I was like, if it's Patton, I'm in. And then, so they said yes. And then I guess there was like a miscommunication where they said Patton said no, because I don't know what happened. So then I was like really bummed out about it. I want this fight anyway. So then I went on Instagram and I straight up just wrote on Justin Patton's most recent post. I was like, I'd love to fight him in September. I'm down if he is. Put one of these emojis on there, mutual respect sort of thing. And then they got back to 247 and said, hey, we want the fight. We just want to make sure that he's not banged up from his last fight. Give us a week. If he's good to go, we're good to go. A week passed, they're good to go. We signed on the dotted line, and then camp started for both of us. So it was just it was a little kind of mini roller coaster, just trying to get the fight. And then, I'm not saying he like ducked it by any means of the imagination, because you know how it is with just like a miscommunication here and there. But I'm just glad that we get to get after it in like 3 weeks. I'm just pumped, man.
Yeah, 3 weeks away from a fight that really does have UFC implication. You guys both have built a great record. I also think it's important, and it's really cool that you show some of that behind the scenes. There is such a thing as miscommunication, particularly with the moving parts and stuff. And I know a lot of fighters, their first instinct is to make it oh, you must be scared, to make it like an insult, where it sounds like what you did is you went the respect route, hopefully, and made it kind of, hey, that's a great opportunity. Yes. Let's see if we can get it done,
Yeah, it would have been very easy for me to jump on his page and be like, oh, he turned down a fight with me. I'm not surprised, coward, blah, blah. You know what I mean? And it's just like, I might have done that a long time ago, but I'm like, I'm over that, dude. I'm just here to compete. I'm here to fight. And I'm here to just put on a show. And, when I see, I honestly haven't seen that much footage of Justin's fights. I did watch his last fight, and I was definitely impressed, because I think 3 fights ago, I wouldn't have given Justin Patton a second look. 3 fights ago, he was 4-3 with 3 of his losses by submission. And, I don't think I would have thought much of him, but clearly something clicked between his last loss and his 3-fight win streak, where he's beaten 3 guys with winning records back to back to back. And one thing I'll say about MMA in general is that you can't count out momentum. And I would say that Justin Patton right now has a lot of momentum. He's beating the best guys that he's fought in his entire career, I would say, are definitely, because if you look at the record, the majority of the guys he fought had maybe 1 to 2 fights, maybe three. And then his last 3 fights, he's beaten guys that were like 3-1, 4-1, who had like Combate Global America experience. And then the last guy he fought was a grizzled 7-6 veteran. And, a guy that came in with heavy hands, and Patton dropped him. And I was very impressed by that. And just overall, just impressed by his decision making in the cage. Like when he needs a break, he scores the takedown. When he's one of the few guys that actually checks calf kicks. So there's definitely some technical prowess to him that definitely has earned my respect. And because of that, it's definitely a fight that I will not be taking lightly by any means of the imagination. I've been training very, very, very hard for Justin Patton. And then the only other thing I can think about is I'm pretty sure that he cornered one of his teammates against me back in King of the Cage. I think his name was Chris Humes Mitchell. And when I fought him, I TKO'd him in 20, 30 seconds. And he never fought again, actually. I'm pretty sure I caused permanent damage to his eye.
Oh, no.
So with that in mind, I would think if I were Justin Patton, I'd be like, oh, I'm getting this one back from my boy, which kind of puts that much more pressure on me. Like I have to go out there and perform against this guy in his hometown, knowing that I'm his biggest step up and against the guy who's beaten one of his former teammates. So there's so much on the line for both of us in terms of victory, bragging rights, the ability to go to the next level, arguably a contender shot, something like that. So this fight kind of culminates to a high point for both of us. And I think both of us will be expected and are going to bring our A+ game.
Yeah, I mean, you're selling this fight perfectly. I mean, this really is. I've often talked about this. You get to a point in your career, Patton's career, where you both have walked the walk. It's understandable that you got to talk maybe early in the career when you are, like you were saying, first couple fights. But the reality is when you get deeper in your career, your record and his record shows the quality of opponents. Like you mentioned, the step up and the click for Patton. Patton's been on my show a bunch, and he's talked about kind of things working together. You know how that goes. And speaking of the momentum, you've won 4 out of your last 5. How are you like as a coach of yourself and knowing yourself? How are you as far as where your momentum's? A couple fights ago, you had, if you just look at the negative part, you had lost 3 out of 4, and then I'm just saying, as far as you look at,
Oh yeah.
lost 3 out of 4, and then you won 4 out of 5. So what was the click point between? Because you and Patton both had sort of a learning development time in your career, which happens. So what was the change between losing 3 out of 4 and winning 4 out of 5?
So it is kind of funny that you say that, because I didn't really kind of put the 2 and 2 together, that both Patton and I have had similar adversity during our career and then a bit of a hot streak after. So I think it's interesting, the parallels there between our 2 career paths for sure. But for me, one of the biggest things was it was the fights that I had. The first one that I lost before that, I was on a mini streak before that one, because at a point I believe I was 6-2, and then I went and I fought Scott Heckman, and that was the really big learning curve. I was basically guaranteed a shot in the Contender Series if I had won that fight, because I had beaten guys that were it was 2-1, 3-1, 4-1, 15-4, and then I jumped to Scott Heckman, who was 26-7 at the time or something like that. Yeah. And everybody that fought in Pennsylvania knows Scott Heckman and knows how experienced and how much of a grizzled veteran he was. And I had a really, really hard fight with him, ended up losing a decision. And then I think after that, it was just kind of a loss of confidence in myself. And I feel like it started creating a bit of a downward spiral where I felt like I didn't have what it took to be at the top level. And then I started doubting my own game and my own abilities. And then, I dropped fights to guys that I definitely shouldn't have lost to. And then I kind of needed a hard reset. And then the pandemic hit. And then for a while, I think I didn't fight for almost 2 years in that span, because, I wanted to fight. I was doing a lot of training, and I actually got in some of the best shape of my life in the pandemic. with the help of my wife, she put me through some of the worst circuit training in our, 300 square foot basement in when we lived in Philly. Um, but I didn't really have a lot of opportunities. And then, I got an opportunity through Art of War. And, I honestly credit a lot of my like second wind or career revival to Mike Bickings in the Art of War promoter, because he was the only guy that was actually willing to give me an opportunity to get a good fight back in. Everybody else just wanted to feed me to undefeated Russians or Russian Caucus fighters, or just use it to, just be fed to the next up and coming undefeated star from Florida or some shit like that. So it was nice to kind of get the opportunities. And then once I won one fight, then I won the next one. And then tragedy struck, unfortunately, after my second win in that 4-fight win streak, when I tore my ACL and I was off for about a year. And I told myself after I got surgery, I was like, I'll fight again in under a year, no matter what it takes. And I got I joined a clinical trial to get an experimental ACL surgery called Burgh bridge enhanced ACL repair, where it actually they use like a bovine protein collagen implant and they regrow your ACL. It's like some absurd, like new age future tech stuff.
Okay.
And it was incredible. And then I ended up, after that, my warm up fight was Jeremiah Labiano, who, if you look at his record, he's one of the scariest people I've ever fought. He fought James Gallagher in the main event in Bellator. And, just because he has a record that, he had over almost like 30 fights or something like that. But a lot of close decision losses to some like the elite fighters of the world. And, we had an absolute war in that fight where, I won by guillotine in the third round, but I broke my rib. I'm pretty sure I fractured my kneecap. It was like one of the roughest fights I've ever been in. And, after that, I was kind of, in this place where I was like, I think I can go for it again. And then that's when I won the Art of War title against Matt Turnbull, who's another fighter that you definitely shouldn't underestimate due to his record. I think a lot of the guys that I fought, despite having not the most stellar records, all of them have just about over 10 fights in the past. Like my past, like 10 opponents have, like, aside from Justin Patton's last opponent, if you crop him out of his record, the majority of my opponents have as many fights as his entire resume combined. So, I do think that that's a difference between us in terms of like the people he's fought and the people I've fought. But and then I dropped my last one, and I'm not. Fuck it, I'll make excuses. I was sick. On fight week. There's nothing else I can say about it. Like, I got sick. I wasn't going to pull out of the fight. I was, pumping myself full of IVs, trying to, get better. So I was like healthy for fight week. And then I had a horrible weight cut because I was pumped full of IVs, and I underperformed. And in a fight that I performed absolutely the worst of my career, I lost by split decision. In a fight that a lot of people think I won. So, with a fight like that in mind, I could arguably still be on a 5-fight win streak. I could be 12-5. And I'm going into this fight with that mindset that I'm still on my win streak, and I'm still, as dangerous a fighter as could be. And I'm still have the momentum riding. And I just feel like that this is still my opportunity to go to the big show.
Well, mindset makes a big difference. So the fact that you have that mindset, whatever works for you, certainly makes sense. I think the fight game has a lot of layers to it. Clearly, being sick, there's all types of things that happen. What is as our final question, it's been great having you on the show. What is your prediction? You don't have to make a prediction, but if you were to make a prediction, what's your prediction against Justin, the General Patton? And if you don't make a prediction, which is fine, then why should people be excited about this fight? We'll wrap up on that.
My prediction is motherfucking war. That's my prediction. I expect it to be an absolute barn burner from start to finish. I don't think there will be a single aspect of MMA that will not be displayed in this fight. I expect there to be striking, wrestling, grappling, cage work, takedowns, takedown defense, you name it. I just think that our two styles combined is just asking for an absolute banger. And I can't really verbalize why else you wouldn't want to tune into this fight. I've seen him, I saw one of his highlights where he just bit down and started swinging. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, fuck yeah. I was like, let's go. This is what I want. So I'm just looking to get in there and just have I don't want. I'm definitely willing to have a brawl with him, but I wouldn't mind making it technical. But if push comes to shove and I got to bite down and swing, I'll bite down and swing. That's what we got to do.
Well, that is why this fight is a super must-watch fight for people that are making the drive out. If you are making the 5-hour drive, buy tickets from 247fighting.com. Give Ryan credit. That'll help him out. If you're going to be staying at home and doing the pay-per-view, which probably most people will be, then download the app 247 Live. 247 Fighting Championships has their own app, which is super cool. Download the app. That way you can watch it on your TV or whatever you can. And then also give Ryan credit when you buy the pay-per-view. It's been fantastic having you on. My name's Luke Basin from MMA Fancast. Hopefully, this isn't the first and only time you've been on the show. Hopefully, I can have you on the show in the future. Would love to continue to follow your career no matter where that goes after your fight. But the fight's coming up. Brawl in the Burgh 23 for 247 Fighting Championship, September 21st, just under 3 weeks away. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Luke Basin from MMA Fancast with Korean Thunder. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
You got it, brother. Take care, everybody. Have a great Labor Day.